presentation or at the end in our interactive discussion. Having said that, our agenda for today will start with, of course, the welcome, showcasing then some hot map use cases that were developed by our participants in some exercises that we sent for them in the last session. Then Juan Baro will present the integrated use of the free online tools, Hotmaps and Thermos. We will have then added with the identification of areas interesting for district heating, developments with the Hotmaps tool, and finally Martin Holly will present the Thermos software, which we haven't seen yet. It's a software for optimized thermal network planning online. We will have a short interactive discussion and a closing. So now, Carsten, the floor is yours again.
Thank you very much. Indeed, so we have, if we look at our wonderful strategic heating and cooling workflow here presented also on our website for you to grab and to discuss with colleagues, with its element on policy, on city planning, on execution. You may remember well that we have had the first online training focusing on the vision and commitment, as well as how to build up a useful, meaningful strategic heating and cooling working group. And after that, we shifted into the into the first cycle, so to say, on inventory potentials, zoning and scenario elements here in the second training session. Today's and third training session, we look into the second cycle. As you can see here, once you have a heating and cooling strategy in place and you have defined policy measures to be implemented, you still need to check them if these projects, single projects or cluster projects, are economically viable, feasible, before you then enter into a more detailed project planning and implementation. Today we talk therefore with focus on the second cycle, so a new element here brought to you within this session. Also, I would like to mention that we have received some exercises that we posted out as optional for you to take a short and a more longer, more comprehensive exercise. Some of you have responded, so thank you very much for doing so. Having done so, you will receive a certificate that acknowledges your commitment, but also your knowledge of using hot maps in its form presented. So if you haven't used this opportunity to be certified yet, please take a look at the second training session and do the exercise. We still accept them in case you are interested. Having said so, let's move into the first presentation. And here, Juan Valle Lopez from Creara Consulting.
1 second, I would like to present some use cases from the participants.
Sorry, yes, indeed. Thank you for reminding me. Over to you, Julian, then, looking at some cases that we have received, how to use hot maps that you have identified as potential use cases. Julian.
Exactly. Thank you, Carsten. So yeah, as you said, we received several exercises, and just to give you a quick look on what our participants have developed. So for example, we have first here the city of Bratislava, with which we obtained this heat demand map for the city. And as you can see here, the city has several high population density areas that could be very feasible for district heating, actually. So this would be a very good case to develop further and actually find spots for district heating potential. Then we can jump to another case, that is the city of Krakow. The good thing of this city is that it's very of high population density all throughout the city. So also good for district heating potential. The negative aspect that was found out in the exercise was that there are not many renewable energy resources available within the city to be used. But well, then that takes the chance to explore further and yeah, go deeper in the case and see what are the real options there. And finally, we have the city of Essen. In this case, you can see this is a very urban, extensive area. It's a very big area, only with some rural land in the south. So it's a bit of a different case. The good thing here in comparison to the previous case is that the participant found out during using the Hotmaps tool that there are many renewable sources and excess heat options within the city available. So that would be very positive to explore further. So having said this, I hope you got a bit of a view of what our participants developed. And now I would just jump to the first presentation developed by Juan Baro from Creara. I will share a video because unfortunately he couldn't be present here today due to bad internet connection, but I'm sure you will understand him perfectly in this video. So if you give me a second, here it goes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Juan Baro. I work as a consultant here at Creara Energy Experts, and today I will talk to you about the integrated use of the free online tools Hotmaps and Thermos, which is a part of the ActionHeat capacity building materials and forms and takes place on this third webinar of our training session. Firstly, for the agenda, today we have a few things to cover. I'll try to be quick. So first we'll start with the methodology definition and scope. Then we'll go on to the integrated use process steps. Then to the data alignment, which is a sub-step inside the identification of suitable district heating and cooling areas. But it has relevant importance in the model. So we wanted to highlight this importance by giving it a specific slide and explaining it a little bit more in depth. And then we'll finish with the recommended bibliography, which you could all find online, and expand your knowledge on this integrated use, as well as in both of the tools that it comprehends. So going on to the methodology definition and scope, the ActionHeat integrated use of Hotmaps and Thermos is understood as the methodology developed to maximize the results produced using each tool individually by combining their functionalities. Both of these tools have remarkable potential based on their individual capabilities, which provides several options for the integrated use. These capabilities have been defined in both of the product portfolios that you can find on the project's website. For the first iteration of our integrated use, we've tried to keep it simple, as this first iteration will keep evolving throughout the project, depending on the user's needs and other identified use cases. The first iteration of the integrated use covers a specific case study that uses Hotmaps for the identifications of areas susceptible of district heating and cooling network development, and Thermos for the detailed financial analysis of these areas. This use case responds to a use case where there's a known potential for district heating and cooling network development, and it is desired to identify the specific areas that should be studied first. There are other relevant use cases, such as the use of Thermos to analyze the feasibility for a specific area, and then Hotmaps for a detailed supply dispatch system, and the use of Hotmaps to identify a geolocated resource potential as an input for Thermos. But these options will explore on further versions of the integrated use, depending, as I said, on the user's needs. So going on to the integrated use process steps, the integrated use has been divided into 3 main steps based on the need to exchange information between both tools in order to alternate their functionalities. The main steps are heat demand estimation, identification of suitable district heating and cooling areas, and detailed feasibility analysis. Steps 1 and 3 are developed using Thermos functionalities, while step 2 will be developed using Hotmaps functionalities. These steps have also been split into sub-steps in order to ease the user experience. So going on to the first step, the heat demand estimation. First, we have the first sub-step, which would be the identification of our working area. This is the definition of the specific working region for the case study development. This could be a specific area deemed by the user, or if there's no specific, there's no preference, there could be a LAU2 area selected, which will then provide the specific areas to be studied with Thermos. Then we'll go on to the estimation of the demand associated with the building stock. This is the association of the thermal demand to each building candidate. As you see on the image on the right-hand side, the Thermos program uses GIS software, which identifies the polygons as buildings and the roads, the lines as roads, but this will be further developed in the Thermos part of this webinar. And then it can provide a heat map based on these polygons and the estimation of their demand associated to them. To do this, it is key to identify common source demand data, which is then assigned using the hierarchy and that we will explain a little bit later. Then we'll need a bottom-up heat demand density raster generation, which is basically formatting the demand file to allow the implementation onto Hotmaps. Like the Thermos output will be in this GIS polygons plus lines format, and we'll need a raster in order to input it into Hotmaps. So going on to the identification of common source heat demand data, this is the decision tree that we developed for demand estimation. We start with the question, are GIS files available? If no, then we'll go to is OpenStreetMaps data available, which basically is the source that Thermos uses in case there is no GIS file implementation. In some cases, we found that the OpenStreetMaps data doesn't cover accurately what the reality is. So in case there is no OpenStreetMaps data available, we'll go on to developing GIS files ourselves because this is the only way to implement the geographic files into Thermos. In case there are GIS files available or there is OpenStreetMap data available, we'll go on to check if there's real demand data or benchmark data available. In case there is, this data will be implemented onto the GIS files or the OpenStreetMaps files already inputted into the tool, and then we'll have the highest hierarchy possible for the project, and it's the Thermos real demand or benchmark estimation. If there's no real demand or benchmark to be found, then the next question to be asked is the LiDAR layer or the building height known? If so, it can be implemented also into the files, and then we'll have a Thermos 3D model estimation. In case there is no LiDAR layer or building height available, we'll go to the Thermos 2D estimation, which is the least accurate one, but in this case, it will be the best possible option. Once this decision tree is already explained, we'll go on to the second step of our integrated use, which is the identification of suitable district heating and cooling areas. First, the first sub-step in this phase is the district heating and cooling potential economic assessment, which is the depiction of suitable areas using the Hotmaps calculation model. These will provide results as the ones you can see in the top image, which are not what Thermos is used to working with. So then we'll go on to the second substep, which is the interpretation of Hotmap results for the definition of Thermos cases, and then going from the first image to the second one, which is something more accurate and which can be inputted more easily into the Thermos Tool. The last part of this step will be the data alignment, which is the review of relevant parameters that are common for both analysis and their alignment. But as I already mentioned, this will be further explained in a later step of this presentation. So the next step of this integrated use will be the detailed feasibility analysis, which I will cover. I'll provide a little overview because there's a specific presentation covering this, which will provide further insight at a later stage of this webinar. So first of all, once all the previous steps have been fulfilled, a specific financial assessment can be carried out using Thermos. It's relevant to say that in addition to the areas identified using Hotmap, potential supply locations and supply parameters such as megawatt size, capacity of the supply, CapEx and OpEx values are really useful inputs and are needed for completing this analysis. As you can see, for example, on the top image, those will be the inputs we will receive from the Hotmaps tool. And for example, the image on the bottom would be the expected result that Thermos would provide. First, the design of the network, and then the assessment, the financial assessment of it. As I was mentioning, this process is described as a step-by-step walkthrough, beginning with the already implemented GIS files used for the demand estimation and finishing with the final economic figures that will come from the network's design. Lastly, for the data alignment, there are several parameters that need to be aligned in order to ensure that results produced by both modules are coherent. These different methodologies for alignment might be needed depending on the input format. Lastly, we'll go to the recommended bibliography. The most important document is the integrated use, which provides a thorough description of this process and has been developed specifically for ActionHeat. But additionally, as the tools have been developed in previous Horizon projects, there are several support materials that are already available online. These materials can be found on each of the project's website. And with this, I would finish my presentation and hope this was quick and you found it interesting. Thank you for your time, and please don't hesitate to contact me in case you have any further doubts or you want to comment on everything what was said.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Juan. Virtually, virtual thank you. I found it very important for us to understand here the decision tree for the demand estimation, but even more so to understand the combination of the two softwares here presented with Hotmaps. And if you remember the pixel picture of the three cities presented by my colleague Julian, then you may think, okay, this is not good enough. Or based on that, I cannot plan. But actually, it provides you with that picture, the 100 times 100 meter picture, the locations where you can zoom in, where you should zoom in, and then apply the software of Thermos, which is address level resolution and gives you that planning option. So I think in combination, it is a lethal combination, so to say, of having no overview, use Hotmaps, understand your heat density areas, and then zoom into with that understanding using Thermos. So this is to come. I'm going to hand over now to our colleague Adit Mala from the TU Vienna. He's entering yet again into some aspects of the Hotmaps toolbox. To be precise, what expertise do you need to follow this process, which was just presented with the Hotmaps and Thermos tools? Over to you, Adit.
Yeah, thank you, Carsten. Give me a second to share my screen. Yeah. Is my screen fully visible?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you once again, Carsten. So as Juan talked about how we develop this integrated approach, I will mostly be focusing on the role of Hotmaps for basically we use Hotmaps in this integrated approach to identify these potential areas which show economic feasibility for the development of the further development of the network. And in that sense, we conducted this, we tried out this integrated approach in a case study for San Sebastian, and my presentation will follow a general outline for the integrated approach, as well as some aspects of the San Sebastian case study. And as we saw in the last training that there are these different calculation modules within Hotmaps, but the last training was mostly focused on how data can be visualized based on each of these modules. But now, once we start using these calculation modules in combination, it provides a much more detailed analysis and elaborative results with regards to identifying potential locations for the implementation of the district heating network. And for this integrated approach, we basically make use of 3 modules within Hotmaps for to develop these potential areas. These include one for the demand alignment and one for demand projection. So basically, we see how the forecasted demand would look on different scenarios based on the renovation rates. And based for each of these different scenarios, we we subject it to the district heating potential economic assessment calculation module within Hotmaps, and based on the sensitivities provided as per the market share and the grid ceiling cost, we are able to generate potential areas under each of these sensitivity scenarios to identify the most feasible where networks can be developed. And to start with, as one already mentioned, a crucial aspect is the data alignment, and the most important one of those would be the alignment of the heat demand densities itself. And for this integrated approach, we decided not to use the Hotmaps data, considering that it is firstly available only on a granularity level of 100 by 100 meter cells. And Thermos itself provides a much more granular or building stock level data. So in that sense, we decided to use the Thermos data as a starting point. But nevertheless, once again, other sources of local data and GIS files are always recommended. But as a last option, we make use of the Thermos data, and this is what we did for the San Sebastian case study. And here we basically, the idea is to download this data from Thermos as in a form of a shape file or a GeoJSON file, and then reiterate the demand, the data structure, and then use the customized heat and gross floor area density maps calculation module, which is available within Hotmaps, to generate these rasters from each of these building stock data from Thermos. So the idea is finally we have a raster file, and aligning these two different sources together, we see that basically what the calculation module in Hotmaps is doing is with all the buildings within a raster are aggregated. The heat demands of all the buildings are aggregated to form these specific values, and we can see that high values are available in highly dense areas. So this is how we transfer the Thermos data, Thermos building stock data, into a raster file that is usable within Hotmaps. But again, I would have to emphasize local data is always preferable, and Thermos data can always be taken as the last resort. And once we have these, say, the base demand profiles, how the demand looks today, we subject it to the demand projection calculation module available within Hotmaps. And here again, the demand is subjected to various different forms of renovation scenarios based on which are available within the Hotmaps tool. And based on these scenarios, we can see that the demand is reduced by certain percentages. So for instance, renovation rate 1 indicates a retrofitting rate of 1% of the gross floor area annually. In that sense, in the future forecasted scenarios, the energy consumption is seen to reduce by 17, 26, and 32% respectively. And so based on the base maps that was created in the previous step, we are now able to generate 3 different raster files, one for each of these scenario. And these 3 raster files will further be used for the area identification. And the next step now is the use of the one of the most important tool in this methodology, the economic potential area assessment tool. So now the idea is based on the input parameters, and the 2 most important parameters here are the market share and the grid cost ceiling. So market share meaning that the potential coverage of the heat demand in the region, and grid ceiling would be the cost input provided based on the local heat distribution rates. And considering these sensitivities, so in particular for the case of San Sebastian, we stick to the market sharing sensitivity. And for each of these 3 different scenario-based raster files we generated in the previous step, we developed these sensitivities for each of these scenarios, and thus we have these 9 different sensitivity case steps or stages. And for example, on the figures on these 3 figures here, I hope you can see my cursor. I provide this sensitivity on for a renovation 1% scenario, and we can see that Hotmaps identifies these potential areas as feasible for potential district heating implementation. But as again, the market share determines what area coverage is actually truly feasible in that sense. And so now we identified these 9 different files, or the shape files, where it has these potential locations assigned to it based on the sensitivity. And combining all these, we for San Sebastian, we identified these 4 different potential locations which show the most economic feasibility with regards to the implementation of a district heating network. And nevertheless, since for this case study, we wanted to focus only on one area based on the potential supply sources, we identified these regions as the most suitable area for the implementation of the district heating network. And basically now this is the shapefile that we provide to Thermos as a starting point for this detailed analysis. And coming to some of the limitations of this approach from the Hotmaps perspective. So I'd have to say that the Hotmaps online tool is basically designed for initial visualization and mostly preferably the use of default data. But here in this case, we are trying to, since we are trying to make this the use of an external input data source. So in that sense, this particular calculation module that converts the Thermos data into a raster file is not available within the Hotmaps tool. So that has to be done externally, and that provides a bit it's out of just the limitations of the online tool. And also the online tool itself has kind of restricted use, and for instance, the demand projection module and the flexibility offered by this particular module is quite limited. So in that sense, it would preferably be good to use external standalone calculation modules, but in that sense, there would be some restrictions with regards to the online tool itself. And finally, with regards to the identification in case of San Sebastian, we identified the location based on, logical rationale that it's closer to the supply sources, but in reality, this might be different depending on the local knowledge of the terrain. And finally, to conclude this particular methodology, the Hotmap side of it provides a starting point for the integrated approach, and also it provides the possibility of analyzing variability in the demand dynamically, and also the identified areas provide a physical boundary within which further detailed thermos analysis can be conducted. So yeah, that's all from me. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Adit. Indeed, an encouragement to everyone to post their questions into the chat so we can pick it up. Maybe we just continue. Before we do so, just to say thank you also for being transparent about the limitations potentially that Hotmaps have. But as I stressed, in combination, they really match with each other, Hotmaps and Thermos. I found interesting just to highlight that with Hotmaps, you are able to look into renovation scenarios. That is very important indeed to identify suitable district heating and cooling areas which are economically feasible. So also great to see that there were grid cost ceiling possibilities to include, to calculate market sensitivity and so on. So thank you very much for this overview. Hope there will be questions that address you and you can answer. Over to you, Hulin. Who is next on our list?
Yeah, thank you, Adit. Thank you, Karsten. So now I would like to give the floor to Martin Holley from CSE, and he will get now into the Thermos tool, which hasn't been presented yet, and how it can help optimize thermal planning online. So Karsten, Martin, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Hulin. And hi everyone. I'll just share my screen and start the presentation. Can people see that okay? Great.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So so what I'm going to do for this session is give a very brief recap on why there was a need for Thermos, because this is the first time I think you've been sort of formally introduced to the tool, and look at how the tool addresses the needs that we identified. And then I'm going to give a very short demo of the tool itself. So why Thermos in the first place? Well, we know that there's a drive to accelerate low or zero carbon heat networks to meet climate goals, improve energy affordability, and also to increase energy security, which has obviously recently become a very hot topic. We also identified barriers to thermal energy system planning because the process was typically found to be time-consuming, expensive, and with a lack of consistency across approaches, and also a lack of capacity and capacity building within local authorities to undertake this work. So after pondering on those issues for quite a while, we were lucky enough to join a consortium and secure Horizon 2020 funding to run the Thermos project, which then Thermos stands for Thermal Energy Resource Modeling and Optimization System. And what we ended up with when the project finished was and that was last year, was an open source web-based software tool that undertakes sophisticated energy demand mapping and network optimization for use in mainly pre-feasibility network analysis. And you can also check it out yourself if you want to have a look. There's the link there in the bottom. But without further ado, I think I'll move on to the actual online demonstration. Now, time's quite limited, but I thought it would be useful to try and just demonstrate the steps needed to get up and running with Thermos, just to give you a feel for how it works. What you can see there are some of the images of San Sebastian, which we used as the case study, as explained by Juan and Adi earlier. And it's just looking at the best ways to integrate the use of both Thermos and the Hotmaps tools. Now, I won't try and recreate the particular networks you can see there, because they're a bit complex and they take a bit of time. But I'll use this location to try and create a map, define a scenario, and hopefully come up with an optimized network. So what I'm going to do now is just switch over to a view of Thermos, which you should be able to see now. So we're in the Thermos tool now. I've skipped the first bit, which is just logging into the tool and creating a new project. And you can see mine here is just called San Sebastian demo. The next step is to define the area you'd like to study. And so I'm going to click on map and just give this a name. And what we can see here is the map selection page. And what we'll do is we'll search for the area of interest first of all. So I'm going to just type in San Sebastian there again. You can see the list comes up there, so I'll click on, and you can see it immediately locates to the area of interest, and I'll zoom in a little bit there. If we go down here a bit, so this is, I'm zooming in on this sort of southern area of one of those areas that you saw before within San Sebastian, which Hotmaps had analysed and thought worthy of further investigation for heat maps, for heat networks. This map import page here gives you the option to use OpenStreetMap, as was mentioned before, or upload your own GIS files. OpenStreetMap can be a bit patchy in places, but it's the default data source for buildings and road data that Thermos uses, and generally it's quite good. And you don't need to add any more information, it's all automatic, so that's the advantage of that. So what I'm going to do here is just define the area that I'm interested in. Just draw a rectangle there, and then click next. Next, it asks for LiDAR coverage, and this again is was briefly covered before. This is where you can add building heights to the tool, which greatly increases the accuracy of the energy demand estimates. It's not mandatory to upload LiDAR data, but it certainly helps if that's available for local data. But there are other ways of adding in building heights and getting subsequent energy demand estimations as well. But the next step is just to check the heating degree days figure for the area of interest, just to check, and it comes up with a default from the Eurostat website, where it has data for different places across Europe. And once you're happy with that, you can click Create Map. And this shouldn't take too long. It's queues waiting to start. It's importing. It should be importing the data from OpenStreetMaps now and calculating the heat demands. It's taking a little bit of time here. It's usually a little bit quicker than that. What it should be doing is taking the information from OpenStreetMaps, that's the buildings and road information, and performing energy calculations on it, and then it sort of produces all that information into a map that you can start to work on. So yeah, we'll just give it another few seconds. I don't know why it's not. It's usually instantaneous. This is always a bit of a risk when you're doing a live demonstration. Okay, I'll just right, I'll just go back and I'll try that one more time. Right, what I'll do is actually go to this example that I've produced here, because otherwise I think, because we're running out of time. So apologies for that. I was hoping to show you the process. It's the case where I've tried this before. I've been through this and it worked flawlessly, but on the day, obviously, there's issues. Why? It might be because I'm using the public version of Thermos, and it's sort of the demand is high on the tool at the moment. But basically, what you can, once you've imported the map, you get to this page where you can start to design a heat network, and you can see the area that you've just imported with the map and the highlighted buildings there. So this was the area essentially that I was trying to import. And if you turn off the satellite there, this is a network that was previously made. And what I would have done is with this map, I could select buildings and roads. So if I go here, I can just show you. How to do that. So you can select a whole range of buildings and roads that you're interested in, and you can then change the status of them ready for the analysis. And you can do this by, there's a sort of shortcut key C, and there's a sort of color code here. So if they're red, it means that they're required, and the object must be included in the analysis, whether that's pathways or buildings. If they're white, that means they're not going to be included in the analysis. And if they're blue, it means that they're optional. So it's up to the model whether they're actually included in the analysis or not. The other thing to mention is with these maps, you can click on any particular element that's a building there, and in the right-hand panel, it comes up with the information that Thermos has on that building. So it has heat demands, annual heat demand estimation from the for the building and the peak heat. And you can select groups of buildings as well, and it will summarize the information there and give you the sort of total heat demand and the peak heat across those buildings. And so you kind of select your buildings, and what I've done there is made these optional. So they're blue, you can see, and you can see the orange building here, sort of browny orange color. And what I've done there is made this a supply, so you've defined the network that you want the tool to analyze, and you then need an energy supply. So I just made that a supply point. And once you do that, it just asks for some basic, sort of the minimum parameters related to that supply that will enable it to optimize the network. And I put some figures in here. So it's sort of giving it a maximum capacity of 2 megawatts. I've given it a capacity cost of 750 currency units per kilowatt. And then the supply cost, so the cost of the heat produced, I've said that's 5 currency, well, cents per kilowatt hour. There's some other settings that you need to look through before you actually optimize, and the objective is one of them here. So there's a choice of 2 objectives. First one is maximize network net present value. So this is the basis on which it will optimize, and this just considers revenue and costs for the network operator. And the other one is maximize whole system net present value, where it considers how to supply heat at the lowest overall cost. And in this one, you can also specify insulation measures and individual heating systems. So there may be cases where the model chooses not to connect a building to the network because it may be cheaper to apply those individual measures instead. But this has actually been optimized on that first one, maximize network NPV. There's other parameters to change here: pipe connection costs and tariffs. So if we go back to the map view, once we're happy with all those settings and you know, there's a whole load of defaults that the tool will assume. What we do is we save it and then we can optimize it. I'll just optimize the network now just to show you what happens. So you can see the model is running and it's going through all the options available, and it's giving me a running commentary with these diagnostics you can see here. Normally the length of time for this just depends on the number of buildings and the number of roads, but you can see here it will start to iterate solutions, and the time it takes, yeah, just really depends on the complexity of the scenario. So I think because I'm running out of time, that would normally take you know, maybe under a minute, I think, for that scenario that I was looking at. But if I just go back to the project, I'll stop that. And you can see, because I've run this before, it came up with a solution. So this is the network that it produced. You can see the sort of with the reddy brown network there. And you can just, to make this a little bit clearer, I've highlighted that and I've selected that, and all the elements of that network are then represented here on the right in the right hand panel. The total heat demand and the heat peak, you get the information there, and then there's other outputs where you can analyze the what they call the solution summary, so all the cost results and those to do with the network, whether you've got whole system results on individual systems, insulation and the like. So I better stop there. The only other thing I was going to say, just a couple of other features. You can add points, demands if you want, and join them to buildings. You can draw a line there. There we go. You can also optimize for a cooling network, which you have to select before you kind of create this scenario. It will also do optimization of supplies, so that's where you need to input the sort of building energy demand profiles over the course of the year. And it's very easy to input the inline or inmap editing of demands just by clicking on various ones or groups, and you can edit demands. And this is very valuable where you have that local accurate information and you want to change the values that Thermos may have estimated. So I'll stop there because we're running out of time. Sorry that didn't go quite as planned, but I hope I managed to show you what Thermos can do and how normally how quickly and easy it is to get up and running from just logging on and getting to a sort of basic, simple, optimized network for a particular local area. So I'll hand back over to I guess Carsten.
Yeah, thank you, Martin. Thank you for the presentation. I think people could see how Thermos works. This is just a short demo. I think it was clear. And anyways, you can all go to the Thermos website and then watch further demo videos there, or even training materials, right? So that should be clearer then. And then we have a question here. Leonardo is asking about Thermos, this projection of costs. What are the highlighted variables considered for the costs?
Yeah, so in relation to the solution, I guess this isn't projection of costs is mentioned there. So we're looking at capital costs, operating revenue, and a parameter we call the levelized cost of heat as well, per kilowatt hour, which is a kind of normalized figure so that you can compare across different options and different projects, and of course the net present value. So those are the kind of the key performance indicators, the KPIs that Thermos comes up with, and in order to get those, there's the input information, as I said, such as the tariffs, the capital costs, and the other information around to get net present value, so the period over which you're doing the analysis, that kind of thing, and the interest rate. So yeah, there's quite a range of parameters there we're dealing with.
Thank you. Here maybe then looking at also Adit and explaining, Adit, you have the view of Hotmaps. Now looking at Thermos, what are the features or the elements that are persuading you to use also Thermos and not only Hotmaps?
Well, for that, I would have to say that. Sorry, was there something? Yeah, I think Thermos itself provides a much detailed network analysis, which I would have to say is not fully available in Hotmaps, and Hotmaps mostly looks, let's say, on at the most on a allowed to region, so on a local administrative unit region, and further step ahead after that would be on a neighborhood label, and this is totally doable within Thermos. And Hotmaps is kind of, that is, neighborhood analysis is not kind of the scope of the Hotmaps tool itself. So if you're dealing with much higher levels of granularity, the use of Thermos would be very beneficial.
Thank you. Then if there are no more questions in the chat, maybe I can flag a question for everyone that participants might wonder. What is the, let's say, expertise you would need for using these tools? Participants might have heard before about Thermos, about Hotmaps, sorry, in the previous sessions, but not about Thermos. Can anyone use it? I guess depending on the detailed results you want to obtain. So maybe Martin, you can say, yeah, what background would you need?
Sure. Thanks, William. So with Thermos, I mean, it's quite user friendly. I think you need to know a little bit about energy and have a kind of grounding of principles of district heating. But you know, Thermos was really designed to support municipalities and you know, the officers that work within them, and energy planners. So it wasn't designed to be overly technical and too arduous to use. I think that the more technical element of it is where you're supplementing data. So where you're adding LiDAR data or GIS data for the area in question regarding building and pathways. So it's about understanding a bit of GIS and manipulating the data into a format that you can upload to Thermos. So that might take a bit of specialism, but as you saw, you can do a basic version, a basic analysis, just by using OpenStreetMap, which Thermos does automatically, and just follow the procedure. And on a normal, you know, computer or laptop, it's a web-based system, so it's fairly straightforward to do that.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Martin, for the clarification. Then I would now jump directly to the next steps of this training and of the ActionHeat project in general. So first of all, I would like to tell everyone to stay tuned by signing up to our ActionHeat newsletter. You can find it in the website. This way you can find future trainings that might happen, and several other events. Then we are also happy to be in Vienna next 11 and 12 of May in the Carve Cities Conference. This is an in-person event, but if you happen to be in Vienna, please pass by and we will be presenting ActionHeat in a round table there. As said, the certificates for the participants will come soon, as long as you could complete the exercises that you can find in our ActionHeat website also. And finally, this is a reminder that the ActionHeat support facility is now open to help 120 municipalities with their heating and cooling planning. So please go to our call for applications in the ActionHeat website again, and you can apply until the 29th of April. So please don't miss the chance. And now I would like to give the floor to Karsten for finalizing this training session.
Yes, and at this point in time, I can just say thank you for listening. Thank you also for maybe to walking with us more complex paths here presented. But I hope this wasn't too complex at all. If it was too complex, also don't be afraid. We are here to help you. As Julian just pointed out, the call for application is out, is accessible on our website, is explained on our website. There are different modules which we can support you with, either using Hotmaps or Thermos or both. This depends on your needs, on your interest to support municipalities. You can apply as a municipality yourself, or you can apply being an energy agent, a consultant, supporting a municipality, a housing association, a city utility. So there are many options how to engage here. We are here to help you with that. If you have any questions in relation to this, please contact us. Contact details are also found on our website. And with that positive message, positive note, I thank the speakers, thank the participants. I'm looking forward to meeting you soon and to stay in contact. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.